VNC, short for Virtual Network Computing, is a way to share a graphical desktop over the network. The concept is quite similar to the remote desktop utility on Microsoft Windows. In this video, we are going to set up one of our systems to act as a VNC server, and we will access the graphical desktop of this system from a remote client. We will set up this system here to allow remote access to it with VNC. We will first need to install the Tiger VNC server package. This is the service package that we need to allow us to remotely view the graphical desktop of this system. Now, we need to configure our user's display to be accessible from a VNC client. The current desktop that we see is desktop 0, so we will need to tell the VNC server to send out desktop 1 for the K. Armstrong user. We do this with the following. Next, we are asked to enter in a password to access this desktop. This password is not the same password you use to log into your system. The VNC password is kept separately from that. You can, however, use the same password you use to log into your system if you want. And the VNC service will create the appropriate configuration files in our user's home directory. Keep in mind that if you want to do this for other users on your system, you will need to repeat these steps for each user account. Just be sure to increment your display number by 1 each time you configure a new display, and enter in a password for each account. Next, make sure that the service is started and configured to run at boot time. When we ran the VNC server command, it started the VNC service for us. Now, we need to edit our etc sysconfig VNC servers file to accept our connection. Uncomment the lines at the bottom of the file and set it up so that we are looking at desktop 1. And be sure to put in the appropriate username. Do the same for the bottom directive, but set it up so that we are listening on port 5901 and remove the local host entry. The local host entry will only allow connections from the local system, and we want to access it remotely on port 5901. We are also removing the no listen TCP option since we want our VNC server to explicitly use TCP. Now enter in the option for the RFB port, which is the port and protocol that VNC uses, for port 5901. Now let's restart the VNC server service. Next, we will need to open the appropriate port in our firewall. Now let's move over to our other system and see if we can access this desktop. First, we will need to install the VNC Viewer application. This is part of the Tiger VNC package. Now let's see if we can access the other system. We do this with the VNC Viewer command. Then we enter in the IP, and then the port number. Enter in the password that we configured earlier, then press enter. And now we are looking at the desktop of the remote system. Make sure that you set this up for a regular user and not the root user. Configuring VNC for the root user is possible, but not a good idea for the sake of your system security.